The quarantine came down within the hour. Security teams sealed every entrance and exit to the Galactic Institute of Xenobiology. Nobody was allowed in or out until the authorities understood what had happened. Hyun sat in a medical examination room, electrodes attached to his head and chest while machines hummed and beeped around him. He had been here for 3 hours already. Heart rate normal, the medical technician said, studying the displays. The technician was a Lithian, his crystalline body refracting light in rainbow patterns. Brain activity normal. Chemical composition normal. I am not finding anything unusual about this human. Across the room, Director Kale ruffled his feathers in frustration. The avian administrator had been pacing for the last 20 minutes. There must be something. Forathian apex hunters do not simply lie down at people's feet. They kill. That is what they do. That is all they do. Dr. Mirai looked up from her data pad. She was human too, one of only 12 humans working at the Institute. Her expertise was xenopsychology, and she had been called in specifically for this investigation. Actually, Director, that is not entirely accurate. Apex hunters are incredibly intelligent. They assess threats. They understand hierarchy. They simply have never encountered a species they recognized as superior. Until now, Director Kale said, his voice sharp with something that might have been fear. Until they met this human. Hyun wanted to protest that he was not special, that he was just a student, but the words died in his throat. He had seen the looks people gave him now. Fear, wonder, suspicion. Even other humans looked at him differently. Nara barely spoke to him anymore, though she had been his closest friend at the Institute. I am done with the scans, the Lithian technician announced. This human is completely ordinary by his species standards. Dr. Mirai made a note on her datapad. That is what I suspected. Thank you. Hyun, you can remove the electrodes now. Hyun peeled off the sensors, grateful to be free of them. His head ached from the constant testing. Can I go back to my room now? Not yet, Director Kale said firmly. We need to run more tests, and we need you to visit the containment area. That made Hyun sit up straight. Visit it? The hunter? It has not eaten since the incident, Dr. Mirai explained, her voice gentler than the director's. It has not responded to any stimuli. It just sits there watching the door. The behavioral specialists believe it is waiting for you. The walk to the containment area felt longer than usual. Taemin, the security officer assigned to watch Hyun, walked beside him in silence. Taemin was human too, one of the few working in the Institute's security division. He was tall and muscular, with a scar running down his left cheek. Before the incident, they had only exchanged brief greetings. Now Taemin was Hyun's constant shadow. You are scared of me now, Hyun said quietly as they walked. Taemin was silent for a moment. No, not of you. Of what you represent. What do I represent? I do not know yet. That is the scary part. The containment area was deep underground behind multiple security doors and energy barriers. The Varathian apex hunter was kept in the most secure section, in a cage made of reinforced titanium and energy fields. Normally, it took 6 guards to even approach this area. Today, there were 20. Dr. Mirai led Hyun to the observation window. Through the transparent aluminum, he could see the hunter. It was exactly as described, sitting motionless, staring at the door. Its crystalline scales looked dull, and its body language spoke of distress. It knows I am here, Hyun said. That is impossible, one of the behavioral specialists said. The walls are shielded. There is no way it could sense you from here. But even as the specialist spoke, the hunter's head turned, not toward the observation window, toward exactly where Hyun stood, through several feet of shielded wall. Its eyes locked onto the position where Hyun stood, and it began to purr. The deep rumbling sound filled the containment area. By the stars, someone whispered. Dr. Mirai looked at Hyun. Are you willing to enter the containment area? Every instinct screamed at him to say no. This was insane. This was dangerous beyond measure. But he found himself nodding. Yes, the preparation took another hour. They put him in protective gear, though everyone knew it would be useless if the hunter decided to attack. They set up emergency containment fields and had tranquilizer weapons ready. Taemin wanted to go in with him, but Dr. Mirai refused. Whatever was happening between Hyun and the hunter, adding more people might disrupt it. The door to the containment cell opened with a hiss of pressurized air. Hyun stepped inside and the door sealed behind him. He was alone with a Class 9 predator. The hunter did not attack. It did not even move aggressively. Instead, it rose to its 6 feet and approached him with what could only be called joy. The purring grew so loud that Hyun felt it vibrating in his chest. The massive creature circled him once, then pressed its head against his chest, nearly knocking him over. "Hey there," Hyun said softly, reaching up to touch the crystalline scales. "You missed me?" The hunter's response was to lie down at his feet, just as it had in the lecture hall. But this time it rolled onto its back, exposing its vulnerable underside. Hyun knew enough about animal behavior to understand what that meant. Complete trust. Total submission. Through the observation window, he could see the shocked faces of the researchers. Dr. Murray was speaking rapidly into her communicator. Director Kale looked like he might faint. Even Taemin's usually stoic expression had cracked into open amazement. Hyun spent 20 minutes in the containment cell. He touched the hunter, spoke to it, even convinced it to eat some of the food that had been sitting untouched in its feeding area. The creature obeyed every gentle suggestion he made. When it was time to leave, the hunter let out a sound that could only be called sad, but it did not try to stop him. As Hyun exited the containment area, he was immediately surrounded by researchers asking questions. How did he do it? What was he thinking? Could he do it again? He answered as best he could, but the truth was he did not really understand it himself. That evening, back in his room, Hyun found Dae waiting for him. His roommate was sitting on his bed, looking troubled. Dae was older, a senior student who had been at the institute for 3 years. They had gotten along well before the incident. Now Dae looked at him with uncertainty. "They are testing all of us," Dae said without greeting. "Every human at the institute. They want to know if we can all do what you did." Hyun sat down heavily on his own bed. "Can you?" "I do not know. They have not let us near any predators yet. But they took samples, ran scans, did psychological evaluations." Dae paused. "Hyun, what is happening to us?" "I wish I knew." Dae stood up, pacing the small room. "The other species are scared. I heard some of them talking. They are saying humans are dangerous, that we should not be in the coalition, that we are predators pretending to be civilized." The words stung, but Hyun could not exactly argue with them. He had seen the fear in people's eyes. He had felt the way the atmosphere at the institute had changed. Humans had always been seen as odd, as strange deathworlders who somehow developed technology and society, despite coming from a brutal planet. But they had been accepted, tolerated, even liked. Now, after seeing what Hyun did to the apex hunter, that acceptance was crumbling into fear. "Dr. Mirai wants to run more tests tomorrow," Hyun said quietly. "She is bringing in other predators, smaller ones. She wants to see if the effect is consistent. And you agreed? What choice do I have? If we do not understand this, the fear will only get worse." Dae was silent for a long moment. Then he sat back down on his bed. "I am not scared of you, Hyun. I want you to know that. You are still my friend. But I am scared of what this means for all of us humans, for our place in the galaxy." Hyun lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Outside his window, he could see the distant stars of the Andromeda Coalition. Somewhere out there were billions of beings from hundreds of species, all living together in peace. Humanity had worked so hard to join them, to prove they were civilized despite coming from a death world. And now, with one moment of eye contact with a predator, all of that was in danger. His communicator beeped. A message from Dr. Murray. The test tomorrow would begin early. They had requested help from Earth, and a xenopsychologist named Isul was already on her way. She specialized in Earth's evolutionary history. Hyun closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but his mind kept returning to the moment in the lecture hall, the way the hunter's eyes had met his, the way something had passed between them, some understanding that transcended words or species. He had not been afraid. That was the key. While everyone else panicked, he had remained calm. But why? What was it about humans, about him specifically, that made an apex predator submit? Tomorrow they would begin finding answers. Hyun just hoped those answers would not make the galaxy fear humans even more than they already did. "You are social and violent, peaceful and aggressive. You contain." See, the Coalition Council meeting was held on Centris Prime, the administrative heart of the Andromeda Coalition. Hyun had never been to the planet before. It was beautiful in a structured way, with gleaming towers and perfectly maintained gardens. Everything about it spoke of order and civilization. It made him feel out of place. Ambassador Sora met them at the landing platform. She was elegant and composed, with gray streaking through her black hair. She had represented Earth in the Coalition for 5 years. navigating the complex politics of uniting hundreds of species. Now she looked tired. "They are calling it the human question," she said without preamble as she led them toward the council building. "Half the coalition wants to restrict human movement. The other half sees economic and security opportunities. Nobody trusts us, but everyone wants to use us." "Sounds like politics," General Quan said dryly. He had arrived from Earth the day before, representing the military perspective. He was tall and stern with medals on his chest from conflicts Hyun did not recognize. "What do they want from us today?" "A demonstration," Sora said. "They want proof that this ability is real and controllable. They want to see multiple humans interacting with multiple predators, and they want to understand the limits of what you can do." Hyun exchanged glances with the others. Nara looked nervous. Day seemed resigned. Taemin was unreadable as always. Jinho just nodded, accepting the situation like a soldier accepting orders. "How many species will be watching?" Hyun asked. "All of them," Sora replied. "The demonstration will be broadcast live to the entire coalition. Every member world will see this. No pressure." The demonstration facility was underground in a secure complex designed for dangerous experiments. The observation area was filled with representatives from dozens of species. Hyun recognized many of them from the news feeds. There was Representative Tharn, still looking concerned. Director Kale had come from the Institute. Scientists, politicians, military officials, all gathered to watch humans interact with predators. Borum, a xenoanthropologist who had been studying coalition reactions to humans, was coordinating the demonstration. She was young for someone in her position, but she had a sharp mind and a gift for understanding complex social dynamics. She briefed them before they entered the testing areas. "We have selected 5 predators," she explained. "Each one has caused major incidents on various stations. Some have killed. All of them are considered too dangerous for normal handling. The coalition wants to see if humans can manage them safely. And if we cannot," Nara asked quietly. Borum's expression was grim. "Then the restrictions on human movement will pass unanimously. Earth will be isolated until the coalition decides what to do with you." The first test was Hyun's. They led him to a large enclosure, empty except for environmental controls. Through the walls he could hear something moving in the adjacent chamber. Something large. "Forathian apex hunter." Borum's voice came through the speakers. "You are familiar with this one." The door opened and the hunter bounded in. It had been transported from the Institute specifically for this demonstration. When it saw Hyun, it made a sound of pure joy and rushed toward him. The observation area erupted in gasps and frightened noises, but Hyun just smiled and let the massive predator press against him, purring like an overgrown cat. He spent 10 minutes demonstrating control, making the hunter sit-stay move to different positions. The creature obeyed every command, not because it was trained, but because it wanted to please him. When Hyun raised his hand, the hunter reared up on its back 4 limbs. When he pointed, it moved in that direction. Perfect cooperation between human and predator. As he left the enclosure, he could hear the debate already starting in the observation area. Some species were impressed. Others were horrified. Nara went next. Her predator was a pack hunter, 3 sleek creatures that normally worked together to bring down prey much larger than themselves. They circled her warily at first, testing, probing for weakness. But Nara stood calm and still, making eye contact with each one in turn. Slowly, the pack accepted her presence. By the end of her session, they were following her commands, moving as a unit under her direction. Day's test was different. His predator was solitary and intelligent, a creature that used ambush tactics and problem-solving to hunt. It tried to trick him, feinting attacks and testing his reactions. But Day remained patient and calm. He did not fall for the feints. Eventually, the predator seemed to respect his awareness and settled down, accepting him as a presence that could not be easily fooled. Taemin faced something truly dangerous. A predator known for its aggression and territorial nature. It attacked immediately, rushing at him with deadly intent, but Taemin had security training. His body language shifted instantly, becoming hard and unyielding. He did not retreat or show fear. He stood his ground and his eyes locked onto the predators with such intensity that it actually stumbled to a halt. The predator backed away, then lowered its head in submission. Taemin had won the confrontation without throwing a single punch, but Jinho's demonstration was what truly shocked everyone. His predator was a ravager, one of the most feared hunters in known space. It had killed 4 handlers during its capture. It was massive, scaled, and filled with barely controlled violence. The observation area fell completely silent when it was released into the enclosure with Jinho. The Ravager charged immediately. But Jinho did not just stand his ground. He moved forward to meet it. His posture was perfect, his confidence absolute. When the Ravager got close, Jinho looked it directly in the eyes and roared. It was not a human sound. It was something primal, something from deep in humanity's evolutionary past, the sound of a predator claiming territory. The Ravager stopped as if it had hit a wall. Then incredibly it backed down. It did not just submit. It retreated, moving to the far corner of the enclosure and staying there, acknowledging Jinho as the superior predator. The observation area exploded in conversation. Some species were applauding. Others were demanding immediate restrictions on human movement. General Quan was smiling. Ambassador Sora looked relieved. Representative Tharn was arguing loudly with several other council members. After all 5 demonstrations were complete, the humans were brought to a waiting area while the council debated. They sat in exhausted silence, the adrenaline slowly wearing off. Nara was shaking slightly. Day looked pale. Even Jinho seemed drained. Did we help or hurt humanity's cause? Hyun finally asked. Both, Ambassador Sora said, entering the room. You prove the ability is real and controllable. That will calm some fears, but you also showed just how powerful it is. That will increase other fears. What happens now? Taemin asked. Before Sora could answer, Borum burst into the room, her datapad clutched in her hand. You need to see this. The reaction across the coalition is splitting 3 ways. She activated a holographic display. News feeds from dozens of worlds appeared, all discussing the demonstration. Some were positive, praising humanity's potential as peacekeepers and predator management specialists. Others were negative, calling humans a hidden threat that needed to be controlled. But a third group, smaller but growing, was saying something else. They are calling you bridge builders, Borum said, pointing to feeds from several prey species. They are saying humans are the first species that can speak both languages. The language of prey through cooperation and civilization, and the language of predators through these instinctive abilities. They think you could be mediators between the coalition and the dangerous universe outside. General Quan leaned forward. That is an interesting perspective. It is also an opportunity, Ambassador Sora said thoughtfully. If we position this correctly, we could turn fear into value. Instead of being seen as a threat, humans could be seen as uniquely qualified to handle situations other species cannot. Like what? Nara asked. Dangerous fauna on colony worlds, Sora said, counting on her fingers. Predator management in expanding territories. First contact with aggressive species. Security operations in hostile environments. There are countless situations where the coalition needs someone who understands predators. You want to turn us into specialists? Dai said. I want to give humanity a purpose that the coalition needs, Sora corrected. Right now we are newcomers asking to be accepted. If we become essential, we do not have to ask anymore. The door opened again. This time it was an official from the council, a tall being with features Hyun did not recognize. The council requests the presence of the human representatives. The debate is concluding and they want input before the final vote. They followed the official to the council chamber. It was massive, with seats arranged in tiers for hundreds of species. Hyun felt tiny standing on the floor looking up at all those alien faces. Some looked curious. Some looked afraid. Some looked calculating, already thinking of ways to use humanity's abilities for their own purposes. High Chancellor Vren presided over the meeting. Hyun had never seen an energy being before. Vren existed as a luminous form, neither solid nor gas, pulsing with colors that hurt to look at directly. The Chancellor's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Humans, Vren said. And the word echoed through the chamber. You have demonstrated abilities that... Isol arrived 3 days later with an entire team of researchers and historians from Earth. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and an intense focus that made people nervous. Her specialty was evolutionary psychology, particularly how Earth's unique environment had shaped human development. She set up her workspace in one of the Institute's main research labs and immediately began pulling up data that made the other researchers uncomfortable. Earth is an anomaly, she announced. To the gathered scientists on her first day, Her presentation filled the main screen with images of Earth's deadliest predators: lions, tigers, bears, crocodiles, sharks. Most death worlds produce one or two apex predators. Earth produced dozens, and somehow humans not only survived alongside them but thrived. Dr. Murray leaned forward in her seat. How is that possible? Humans are not particularly strong or fast. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. No, Isul agreed. But they have something else: persistence, intelligence, and most importantly, the ability to recognize and understand predator behavior. She clicked to the next slide, showing human hunters from thousands of years ago. Humans did not just survive predators. They became predators themselves. They studied their competitors, learned their patterns, and beat them at their own game. Council Representative Tharn shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The insectoid being's antenna twitched with agitation. This is exactly what concerns the Coalition. You are saying humans are predators? All omnivores are predators to some degree, Isul said calmly. But humans are unique. They evolved the ability to switch between predator and prey behavior instantly. They can be social and cooperative, then become focused hunters in moments. This flexibility is what allowed them to dominate their planet. Director Kale spoke up, his feathers ruffled. But this does not explain what happened with the apex hunter. Predator recognition is one thing. Making another predator submit is entirely different. Isul smiled, though it did not reach her eyes. That is where it gets interesting. Dr. Mirai, can you show them the brain scan comparisons? Dr. Mirai activated another display. It showed brain activity patterns from various species, including humans. When most species encounter a predator, their brain activity shows fear response. Fight or flight instincts activate. Stress hormones flood the system. But look at Hyun's scan from when he was near the apex hunter. The scan showed something different. Hyun's fear centers were quiet. Instead, the areas associated with assessment, calculation, and social hierarchy were active. His brain had not seen a threat. It had seen a fellow predator to be evaluated. It is not just Hyun, Dr. Mirai continued. We have tested the other humans here. They all show similar patterns, though Hyun's is the strongest. When humans see predators, they do not panic. They assess. They calculate dominance. They unconsciously send signals that other predators recognize. Jinho stood up from the back of the room. He was the Institute's combat instructor, a human with military training from Earth. You are saying we automatically challenge predators? Not challenge, Isil corrected. Communicate. Humans have lived alongside dogs for thousands of years. Dogs are pack hunters, predators. But humans learn to speak their language. Eye contact, body posture, calm confidence. These are the signals of a pack leader, an alpha. Most species never needed to learn this language because they were prey. They ran from predators, they hid. But humans stood their ground and communicated as equals. The room was silent as everyone absorbed this information. Finally, Representative Tharn spoke, his voice careful. So you are confirming that humans are dangerous? That they possess abilities that make them superior to predators? No, Hyun said, speaking for the first time. Everyone turned to look at him.
He had been sitting quietly in the corner, listening.
Not superior, just different. The apex hunter did not submit because I was stronger. It submitted because I was not afraid. Because I recognized it as a predator and showed respect, not fear. It is not about domination. It is about understanding. Isul nodded approvingly. Exactly. This is not a weapon, Representative. It is communication. But Hyun could see the doubt in Tharn's eyes and the eyes of many non-human attendees. They saw humans who could make apex predators lie down at their feet, and they saw a threat. The testing began the next day. It was more extensive this time. They brought in 5 different predator species, each classified as dangerous but not quite at the apex hunter's level. Hyun, Nara, Dae, Taemin, and Jinho were the test subjects. The first predator was a Keltharian stalker, a 4-legged creature with venomous spines and eyes that could see in complete darkness. It was released into a controlled environment with Nara. The security team stood ready with tranquilizers, but they were not needed. Nara stood still, made eye contact, and the stalker approached cautiously. It did not submit completely like the apex hunter had with Hyun, but it did not attack either. It circled her once, then sat down at a respectful distance watching. Dae was next with a different species. Then Taemin. Each human showed the same basic pattern. The predators recognized something in them, something that made them pause and reconsider their normal hunting behavior. But Jinho's test was different. The predator they brought in was a Skarax warrior, a bipedal hunter known for its aggression. It was not a Class 9, but it was dangerous enough that most species would not share a space with it. When it was released into the room with Jinho, it immediately charged. Jinho did not run. He did not flinch. He stood his ground, made direct eye contact, and his body language shifted. It was subtle, but every human in the observation room recognized it. Jinho had gone from friendly combat instructor to trained soldier in an instant. The confidence in his stance, the way he held his shoulders, even the intensity of his gaze changed. The Skarax warrior stopped mid-charge. Its head tilted, confused. Then slowly it lowered itself into a submissive posture and backed away. Jinho had not touched it. He had not said a word, but he had communicated perfectly in the language of predators. Incredible, Dr. Mirai whispered. Terrifying, Representative Tharn corrected. The tests continued for a week. By the end, the results were clear. Humans had an ability that no other species in the coalition possessed. They could communicate with predators on an instinctive level. The stronger the human's confidence and calm, the more pronounced the effect. Hyun had the strongest natural ability, but Jinho's military training gave him even more control over the signals he sent. News of the tests spread throughout the coalition. Hyun watched the galactic news feeds with growing concern. Some reports were positive, suggesting humans could be valuable in managing dangerous fauna on colony worlds, but others were fearful, painting humans as hidden predators who had infiltrated civilized society. They are calling for restrictions on human expansion, Nara said one evening. She and Hyun sat in the common area, watching the news together. Their friendship had slowly recovered over the past week. Some planets do not want humans visiting anymore. Can you blame them? Hyun asked quietly. We scared them. We showed them something they did not know existed. But we are not dangerous, Nara protested. We are not going to hurt anyone. We do not have to hurt anyone to be dangerous, Hyun said. Just the potential is enough. On the screen, a news anchor was interviewing a coalition security official. Should we be concerned about human military expansion? The anchor asked. Earth's application to join the coalition security forces has been fast-tracked, the official responded carefully. Their unique abilities make them valuable assets. However, we must ensure proper oversight and control. Taemin, watching from across the room, laughed bitterly. They want to use us, but they are afraid of us. Typical. Jinho joined them, sitting down heavily in a chair. I received a message from Earth's military today. They want me to return home. They are creating a new division, one that will work with dangerous fauna across coalition space. They want humans with military training to lead it. Are you going? Day asked. I do not know. This could be good for humanity. It could give us a purpose, a way to prove we are valuable to the coalition, but it also confirms what everyone is thinking, that we are different, that we are more like the predators than the prey. Hyun thought about the apex hunter still in its containment cell. He had visited it several times over the past week. Each time the creature greeted him with what could only be called happiness. It trusted him completely, but that trust came from recognizing him as a fellow predator, not as a friend. What if they are right to be afraid? He said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. What if we are dangerous? Not because we want to be, but because of what we are? We are what evolution made us, Isolde said, entering the room. She had been listening from the doorway. Just like every other species. The question is not whether we are dangerous. The question is what we do with the abilities we have. She walked over to the group, her expression serious. I have been analyzing the historical data. Every successful civilization in the coalition is made up of prey species, species that evolved to cooperate, to avoid conflict, to seek safety in numbers. They built their societies on those principles. And humans? Nara asked. Humans are both predator and prey. You cooperate like prey species, but you hunt like predators. The lecture hall buzzed with the soft sounds of 70 different species settling into their seats. Hyun sat in the middle row, his datapad balanced on his knee as he waited for class to begin. Next to him, Nara was organizing her notes, her fingers moving quickly across the holographic display. The Galactic Institute of Xenobiology was impressive, even after 6 months of studying here. Students from all corners of the Andromeda Coalition filled the curved seats, their bodies ranging from the crystalline forms of the Lithians to the floating gas bags of the Aryans. Professor Velik slithered to the front of the room, his reptilian body moving with practiced ease. His scales caught the light as he activated the main display screen. Today's topic appeared in glowing letters: Predator Psychology and Classification Systems. Today we discuss the most dangerous creatures in known space, Professor Velik announced, his voice carrying through the translation devices everyone wore, the Class 9 Predators. These beings have evolved on death worlds, planets where survival means becoming the ultimate hunter. Hyun leaned forward, interested. Earth had been classified as a death world too, though humans were considered unusual. Most death world species were either massive or incredibly aggressive. Humans were neither, really, just persistent. The professor continued his lecture, showing images of various predators. Each one looked more terrifying than the last. Massive jaws, armored bodies, claws that could tear through steel. The other students shifted nervously in their seats when each new image appeared. Hyun noticed that several of the smaller species actually trembled when a particularly vicious creature filled the screen. In our facility, we maintain 3 Class 9 specimens for study, Professor Velik said. The Varathian apex hunter is perhaps the most dangerous. 6 limbs, crystalline scales harder than most armor, and a hunting intelligence that rivals sentient thought. They have never been domesticated. They have never been truly controlled. Nara leaned over to Hyun. Why do they even keep something like that here? She whispered. Before Hyun could answer, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then the emergency sirens began to wail. Professor Velik's head snapped toward the door. His scales turned a pale color that Hyun had learned meant fear. Everyone remained calm, the professor said, but his voice was tight. Activate lockdown protocols. The door burst open before the locks could engage. It entered the room like a nightmare made flesh. The Varathian apex hunter was larger than Hyun had imagined from the pictures. Its 6 limbs moved with terrible grace, each step deliberate and controlled. The crystalline scales covering its body reflected the emergency lights, creating dancing patterns across the walls. Its head was triangular with rows of teeth visible even with its mouth closed. But it was the eyes that caught Hyun's attention. They were intelligent, calculating, scanning the room for threats and prey. Chaos erupted instantly. Students screamed and scattered, pushing toward the exits. Professor Velik tried to reach the emergency containment controls but froze when the hunter's gaze fixed on him. Several of the larger alien students tried to shield the smaller ones. Someone activated a personal shield, the energy barrier humming to life. The hunter's attention snapped to the movement. Hyun remained in his seat. He did not plan it. He did not think about it. His body simply did not react with fear. Perhaps it was shock. Perhaps it was something else. But while everyone else ran, screamed, or hid, Hyun sat perfectly still and watched the creature. The hunter took down the student with the personal shield in one smooth motion. Its claws sparked against the energy barrier before finding a gap. The student collapsed, unconscious but alive. The creature was not killing, Hyun realized. It was establishing dominance, showing everyone in the room who was the apex predator here. Then the hunter turned its attention to the rest of the room. Its eyes swept across the fleeing students, across Professor Velik frozen by the wall, across Nara who had pressed herself against the far corner. Then those intelligent eyes found Hyun. Time seemed to slow down. Every instinct Hyun had ever developed told him to stay still. Not to run, not to scream, just to remain calm and hold that gaze. He had grown up around animals back on Earth. Dogs, cats, even the occasional wolf at the conservation center near his home. He understood the language of predators even if he had never put it into words. The hunter moved toward him. Its 6 limbs carried it forward with disturbing speed. Students in its path scrambled away, but it ignored them completely. Its entire focus was on Hyun. Closer, closer. Each step brought those terrible claws, those razor teeth, that armored body nearer to where Hyun sat, 10 feet away, 5 feet, 3 feet. Hyun did not blink. He kept his eyes locked on the creatures. His body relaxed but not submissive. He did not challenge, but he did not surrender either. He simply existed in that moment, breathing steadily, his heart rate barely elevated. The hunter stopped directly in front of him. Its massive head was level with Hyun's face. He could smell its breath, hot and metallic. He could see every detail of those crystalline scales. One swipe of those claws could end him instantly. One bite could crush his skull. Instead, the creature tilted its head, studying him. Its eyes, which had been filled with hunting instinct moments before, seemed to shift, change, calculate something that Hyun could not understand. Then, slowly, deliberately, the Varathian apex hunter walked in a circle around Hyun's chair, once, twice. Its body brushed against his arm on the second pass, the scales cool and hard against his skin. The entire lecture hall had gone silent. Even the emergency sirens seemed distant. On the third circle, the hunter stopped. Then, with movements that seemed almost gentle for such a massive predator, it lowered itself to the ground, its 6 limbs folded beneath its body. Its massive head rested on its front claws, and it lay there at Hyun's feet and began to emit a low rumbling sound. It was purring. Hyun blinked. His brain tried to process what had just happened. Around the room, every single being stood frozen in absolute shock. Professor Velix's mouth hung open. Nara stared from her corner, her eyes wide. The other students had stopped fleeing, turning back to witness something that should have been impossible. The most dangerous predator in the known galaxy, a creature that had killed dozens of handlers and guards during its capture, was lying at the feet of a human student like an overgrown house cat. Hyun slowly reached out his hand. Part of him screamed that this was insane, but another part, the part that had remained calm during the entire encounter, told him it was okay. His fingers touched the crystalline scales of the hunter's head. The purring grew louder. Security forces burst into the room 3 minutes later, weapons raised and containment fields active. They stopped in their tracks, unable to process the scene before them. Professor Velix found his voice first, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "By all the stars in the galaxy," he said. "What are you?" Hyun did not have an answer. He was just a student from Earth, studying xenobiology far from home. But as he sat there with the Varathian apex hunter purring at his feet, he realized that something fundamental had just changed. Not just for him, but perhaps for every human in the galaxy. The creature refused to move until Hyun stood up. Even then, it watched him with what could only be called devotion, as the security team carefully guided it back toward containment. As they led it away, it kept turning its head back, looking at Hyun one more time. The questions would come later. The investigations, the tests, the fear and wonder from every species in the coalition. But in that moment, Hyun just stood there, his hand still tingling from touching those crystalline scales, and wondered what exactly had just happened in this classroom. Behind him, Nara finally moved from her corner. "Hyun," she said, her voice shaking. "What did you do?" He turned to look at her, then at the dozens of other faces staring at him with expressions ranging from awe to terror. "I have no idea," he said honestly. But somewhere deep inside, in the part of his brain that had remained calm while a Class 9 predator approached, he knew this was just the beginning. Hana had always been good at finding things people wanted to stay hidden. As an intelligence operative for Earth's diplomatic corps, it was her job to understand the currents beneath the surface, to see patterns that others missed. And right now she saw a pattern that made her deeply concerned. She sat in her small office on Centris Prime, surrounded by holographic displays showing data streams from across the coalition. Financial records, communication logs, security reports. Most people would see random noise. Hana saw connections. "Young-ho," she called to her colleague in the next room. "Come look at this." Young-ho was a political analyst, young but sharp. He had been tracking the fallout from the human demonstrations, monitoring which species were becoming more hostile and which were becoming more accepting. He walked over, coffee in hand, and looked at her displays. "What am I looking at?" "Payment records," Hana said, highlighting several transactions. Large sums moving between shell corporations and various council members. All made in the 3 months leading up to the containment failure at the Institute. Young-ho frowned. "You think the apex hunter escape was not an accident?" "I know it was not," Hana said, pulling up more data. "Look at the maintenance records. Someone disabled 3 separate safety systems the day before the incident. The official report blamed equipment failure. But equipment does not fail in patterns. Someone wanted that creature to escape. Why? Young-ho asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. To create fear, Hana said. To show the galaxy what happens when humans and predators interact. If Hyun had been killed, it would have been tragic but not threatening. But he was not killed. Instead, he demonstrated an ability that terrified half the coalition. Someone knew that would happen, She pulled up another set of records. And look at this. The same financial patterns appear before 3 other incidents over the past year. A predator escape on a colony world, an aggressive species attack on a trading station. Each incident created fear about dangerous fauna. Each incident happened in places where humans had recently arrived. Someone is trying to make humans look dangerous, Young-ho said slowly. Or trying to justify restricting human movement, Hana added. These payments trace back to several council members, but the main source is interesting. She highlighted one name. Chairman Torvex. Young-ho's eyes widened. Chairman Torvex was a powerful figure in the Coalition Security Council. His species, the amphibians, had built their influence on advanced containment and control technology. They were the ones who captured dangerous predators, who built the security systems, who managed the threats that scared other species. If humans can manage predators naturally, without technology, Young-ho said, then Torvex and his allies lose their monopoly on security. Exactly, Hana said. This is not just about fear. This is about power and profit. If humanity becomes the solution to predator problems, several species lose significant political and economic influence. She began pulling up more data. I have been tracing Torvex's connections. He has been meeting secretly with representatives from 6 other species, all of whom have voted against human expansion. They have been pooling resources, sharing technology, and planning something. Planning what? Before Hana could answer, her communicator beeped urgently. It was Ambassador Sora. Hana, we have a problem. There has been another incident. The incident happened at a civilian station on the edge of Coalition space. A cargo ship carrying dangerous fauna had experienced a containment breach. 3 predators had escaped into the station's public areas. Dozens of people were trapped, unable to evacuate. The station's security forces were helpless against the creatures. And coincidentally, Hyun, Nara, and Dae had arrived at that station just hours before, scheduled to give a talk about human abilities and predator management. It is too convenient, Hana told Ambassador Sora as they rushed toward the transport hub. They are there by chance and suddenly predators escape? This is another setup. Setup or not, people are dying, Sora said grimly. We need to respond. By the time they arrived at the station, the situation had deteriorated. Local news feeds showed terrified civilians barricaded in shops and offices while the predators roamed the corridors. Security forces had sealed off entire sections, trapping people inside with the creatures. The death count was rising, but Hyun, Nara, and Dae had not waited for authorization. They had gone into the danger zone trying to help. The news feeds showed footage of Hyun facing down one of the predators in a crowded market area. The creature, a massive scaled hunter, approached him aggressively. But Hyun stood his ground, made eye contact, and the predator stopped. Then it sat down, allowing Hyun to guide it away from the civilians. Similar scenes played out with Nara and Dae. They moved through the station, finding the predators and calming them, preventing more deaths. Within 2 hours, all 3 creatures were contained and the civilians were safe. It should have been a triumph, proof that humans could help in exactly these situations. Instead, it became ammunition for their enemies. Convenient that humans were there when the escape happened, Chairman Torvex said in an emergency council session that evening. His image appeared on screens throughout the station. Convenient that they could control creatures that killed a dozen people before they intervened. Some might say too convenient. What are you implying? Ambassador Sora demanded. I am implying that perhaps humans caused this incident, Torvex said, his amphibian features arranged in an expression of concern. Perhaps they released the predators to create an opportunity to look like heroes, to justify their presence in the coalition. The accusation was absurd, but Hana could see it gaining traction. Fear made people believe conspiracy theories, and Torvex was skilled at exploiting fear. That is ridiculous, General Kwan said, standing beside Ambassador Sora. My people were helping. They saved lives. Or they created a crisis to demonstrate their value, Torvex countered. Either way, it proves humans and predators are too dangerous to coexist with civilized species. I am calling for an immediate vote to restrict all human movement within coalition space. Hana looked at Young-ho. They had the evidence of the real conspiracy, but exposing it now would look defensive, like humans trying to shift blame. They needed more proof, something undeniable. I need to talk to Hyun, Hana said. Now. They found Hyun in the medical bay being treated for minor injuries. Nara and Day were there too, along with Taman, who had arrived on a later transport. They all looked exhausted and frustrated. "They are saying we caused this," Nara said angrily. "They are saying we are working with the predators to scare people." "I know," Hana said. "But there is a real conspiracy and it is not ours." She quickly explained what she and Young-ho had discovered. The financial trails, the pattern of incidents, Torvex's involvement. "So all of this from the beginning was planned?" Hyun asked. "Yes. The apex hunter escape at the Institute was supposed to create fear. When you demonstrated control instead, they needed a new approach. So they have been staging incidents to make humans look dangerous, and now they are trying to frame you for this one." "How do we prove it?" Day asked. "We need access to Torvex's private communications," Young-ho said. "If we can show he ordered these incidents, the entire conspiracy falls apart." "That is illegal without council authorization," Taman pointed out. "So is sabotaging containment systems and getting people killed," Hana replied. "We do not have time to be legal. If Torvex pushes through his restrictions, Earth gets isolated and humanity's future in the coalition ends." There was a moment of silence. Then Jinho spoke up. "I can help. I have contacts in coalition security, people who owe me favors. If there is evidence to find, we will find it." Over the next 3 days they worked in secret. Jinho's contacts provided access to secure systems. Hana traced communication patterns. Young-ho analyzed the data, and slowly, piece by piece, they built an undeniable case. Torvex had not just financed the incidents. He had planned them in detail, coordinating with allies across multiple species. The goal was clear: create enough fear about humans that the coalition would restrict or expel them entirely. This would maintain Torvex's control over security matters and protect the economic interests of his allies. But the conspiracy went even deeper. Some of Torvex's communications revealed plans for additional incidents, including one that would have resulted in mass casualties on a human colony world. They were not just trying to isolate humanity. They were preparing to justify military action against Earth itself. "This is worse than I thought," Ambassador Sora said when they showed her the evidence. "If this goes public wrong, it could start a war. Or it could save us," General Kwan said. "If we present this to the High Chancellor, Torvex and his allies will be the ones facing justice." But presenting the evidence proved harder than expected. Torvex had influence throughout the council. When they tried to schedule a meeting with High Chancellor Vren, they were blocked. When they tried to go public, the news networks refused to cover it. Torvex's allies controlled too many channels. Then the assassination attempt happened. Hyun was walking back to his quarters late one evening when 3 figures attacked him in a darkened corridor. They were professionals, armed with weapons designed to kill quietly.